think I am live. Oh yeah, I am live. Woohoo. There goes the things. There we go. I don't know what to say at this point because I don't know if anybody's doing the thing. Oh, wait, don't look at that. Look, there's my screen. I'm really slick. Hang on, let's do that. As you can tell, I usually schedule these for the week. I thought 10:15 is a good time because 10 o'clock I'm not really ready, and for whatever reason yesterday when I was scheduling this wonderful video that you are watching right now, I decided, oh no, 10's fine, and hence I look like this and haven't really got my presentation up. I tell you what though, what I can do, if I just play that in the window, I can show you, because I've just been doing kettlebells. I injured myself doing kettlebells. Look, blood blister and everything, it's just self-harm at this point. Kettlebells, I'll use that for strength and conditioning, and because I do jiu-jitsu, along with 110 years ago, Letty Pegg was doing jiu-jitsu, kinda. Letty Pegg didn't exist 110 years ago. Edith Garrud did exist, and she's probably, now this is the thing, it's a Sunday in 1910, and I'm not sure it would be the dumb thing to go and do jiu-jitsu, because back then, really, the only things open on a Sunday were church and pubs, and that was it. There was nothing else that was, and pubs only for a limited time, and it was a weird time of the week where they allowed reputable women in, wives and the rest of it. To be fair, I think most women went into pubs and were pretty reputable, but they probably weren't allowed in certain parts. They weren't allowed to order drinks in certain parts. And if they did, it meant they weren't reputable. You couldn't, and not in a sort of like, oh, they're not reputable because they're real political, like suffragettes or anything like that. No, they weren't reputable. They're the wrong sort. So, but yeah, they didn't use kettlebells. They used these, which are Indian clubs, and this is a brilliant exercise regime that you had, but it's also a very good way of not being arrested if you're a suffragette. You can swing these around your head, and very hard for a policeman to come near you without getting hit on the noggin, I believe the phrase is, because things got pretty violent with the suffragettes back then. I think it was, when was the Battle of Glasgow? I think it was 1914. It was quite late on. They were trying to arrest Mrs. Pankhurst. She was scheduled to speak up in Glasgow, and so she went up to Glasgow, and the police were waiting for her outside this auditorium, thinking, right, we're going to get her. And the way she got past them was quite good. She bought a ticket to her own show. Went to sit in the audience because all women look the same. We do. We have silly hats. We look the same. So she went into there and started speaking. And her bodyguard, who'd taken the train from London overnight, like the overnight train from London, and they had concealed on themselves these clubs. And look at the size of them. And they each had a couple each, and they were concealed in their costumes. So we're talking really deep pockets here. Women had really good pockets, but apparently it was a very uncomfortable journey. And it was even more uncomfortable when they got to Glasgow and started smashing people around the face. So, and by people, I mean police officers. So that was fine. They were politically doing it, not criminally. I don't think it's, anyway, it's really dodgy, this whole history. Anyway, so she said, sorting out her wet hair. Yeah. So what was I going to show you? So today, in The Unstoppable Letty Pegg, which is my book all about this time of history, when suffragette movement just started to reignite after the conciliation bill. I still can't. That's my cat yelling. But after the conciliation bill was ruled out, this is what this is when my book is set. There we go. Gosh, see, this is the thing. If I'd had that extra 10-15 minutes, I'm not sure if anybody's watching either. We got a few, and I've had a few loves, so that's nice. Thank you. I'm not sure really if this is wise or the right way to go about anything, but I thought I'd let you know about the book. A lot of you are grown-ups, and you're probably not going to read it. But I quite like this scene because basically Letty has gone to the pub with her dad after church. That's another thing. They did go to church. It was much more of a Christian nation back in 1910, and also very pro-royal. Because Britain was like the centre of this massive empire, the institutions were a lot more, I don't know, established and respected than they are now. At the same time as there was a lot more challenge. There was lots of anarchist riots, so bombs that be set off and all sorts of exciting, like gun crime as well was huge. The siege of Sydney Street happens in this book as well. So that's because Letty's dad narrowly avoids that, even though I'll let you in on a secret here, because this is the thing, when you write history as fiction, you take little things. So Letty's dad is a police officer. He's a constable for the Metropolitan Police. But in the book, I have him involved in the siege of Sydney Street, which we know was the city police. It was the city police who suffered the huge losses in that. And as a result, it's historically inaccurate. But my publisher doesn't know. It's fine. But little things like that you can get away with. I mean, I've made up an entire character of Letty Pegg. I've made up Mabel. So it's the rest of it. Some of the research I did, like I wanted her to be thrown into a dust cart at one point. I thought if she gets thrown in, right, she can sort of peek out and she can hide and that sort of thing and hide from the police. No, because they didn't invent dust carts until 1920. In that sense, they had open carts, but you can't hide in that, so it was completely pointless. This is the trouble with writing historic fiction. Stuff that you want to be invented was not invented. Anyway, if you've got any questions, do give us a comment, say hello, give us a wave, that sort of thing. A few other people. Yeah, there's still quite a few of you on here, even though I'm very sleepy. I'll just see what else I can talk about. Yeah, so another thing was because they had a new king this year. They just got a new king, as you do. Well, the other one died, and they got a nice new one. So it was George V, wasn't it? That was the king. So, but of course, in every classroom they would have had a portrait of George V, and the portrait of George V would be looking down, and they'd have had to sort of say the national anthem, and I don't know, bow towards it or something. Very Japanese, isn't it? But no, it's a very different time in that. And of course, on Sunday, every single shop would have been shut. You couldn't go out and buy anything, which is a very odd. That's changed a lot. I think that's changed nearly in my lifetime. I think when I was very, very small, most of the shops were shut on Sunday, and that's how the world changes. Now we're just very materialistic and capitalist, aren't we? Buy anything at any time. 24-hour shops. Who'd have thunk? So if anybody's got any questions, do ask them. I'm going to see if I can be inspired by anything. But yeah, it didn't, like I said in the previous videos, it didn't get overly violent until really 1912 and the Cat and Mouse Act came up, because that is when women were arrested, and if you wanted out, and you wanted to have yourself recognised as a political prisoner, you're basically forced to starve yourself in order for that recognition to happen. So you could be supplied with writing utensils, so you could write to the papers and say how unfair it was and how important it was for women's right to vote. If you wanted all that, you starved yourself. If you starved yourself, you're force-fed. Only if you're working class, force-fed. If you're upper class, was being offered a spoon, and you would go, no, I can't possibly. But yeah. So anyway, and it really kicked off in sort of 1912, and obviously you had Emily Davison, who I've heard a lot of controversy about whether she deliberately ran under the king's horse, and if you want my opinion, she definitely deliberately ran under the king's horse. I was reading about the court. There's a big court case in 1913 or 1912 about the newspaper. So they had a newspaper which was basically inciting violence, and rightly so. And so they got taken to court, and this divided the WSPU, WSPU, up entirely. And they lost a few key members because of it. And in the sort of evidence of that, it was showing the arrests, and you can read Emily Davison's court records. And honestly, when she was in prison, she'd try and kill herself. She tried to throw herself downstairs and through railings, over the balconies of Holloway Prison, and tried to, do herself in. So she was mad. And of course, she on because my book ends on the day of the census in 1911, and because Letty Pegg does very exciting things. But while Letty Pegg and the rest of the women are in Trafalgar Square protesting, saying, obviously, we're not going to put ourselves in the census, are we? So we put yourself in, you know, no representation without representation. Voting thing. But yeah, so they refused to put their names in the census. A lot of suffragettes did. Edith Garrud put her name in the census because it was a criminal act not to. And I think she was, although she was a suffragist at this point, and she was helping the WSPU by training some of the women, she wasn't out there herself on the protests, even though she might have been in this book. I lied again. I don't have any evidence that she wasn't at Black Friday. So I'm pretty sure she wasn't at the Battle of Downing Street, which happens 4 days' time, because there would have been that most of the women there were arrested. But there were serious injuries to the police. One guy had his knee twisted quite badly, kneecap off, that sort of thing. Anyway, I can't remember what I was saying, but the point is it's a very good one. I think, by the way, guys, this particular video might be deleted because I'm so tired. But I hope I've been a bit interesting. That's if you look at here, this lady here, that's Mrs. Billinghurst in her tricycle, who's an utter hero. She was paralysed and went on all these protests and demanded recognition. And yeah, utterly brilliant. Anyway, chaps, because I need more coffee, I'm going to have more coffee, and then I might come back and actually do a decent version of this. But bless you to those of you who watched. I know we were in double digits at the beginning, and I understand why it went down quite quickly. I will speak to you soon. Have a brilliant weekend, and live long and prosper.